Welcome to the Tyler Werner Show, discussing all the latest in Philadelphia sports. Finally, Jeffrey Lurie addresses the media with the State of the Eagles address, if you will, for the owners' meeting after about a year of not addressing the media at all. After the first season of Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz concludes a few months later, Jeffrey Lurie addresses a wide range of topics, among them the blocking of letting the Jets hire John DeFilippo, of course praising Howie Roseman and what he's done, the hiring of Joe Douglas after last year's draft, praising Carson Wentz, and among one of the most interesting topics, would the Eagles consider drafting Joe Mixon? It's Jeffrey Lurie Day here in the Tyler Werner Show as we turn our attention to the ownership. And now, here's Tyler Werner.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, good day here on the Tyler Werner Show.
You got to open your heart.
Jeffrey Lurie Day, as it can be coined, as he had his press conference, his first press conference, addressing the media in about over a year. And it's about time, as we're now essentially 3 months removed from the Eagles season after their 7-9 finish, rookie year for Carson Wentz, for head coach Doug Peterson, and this kind of revamped regime, if you will. Of course, Howie Roseman, the rebirth of him essentially basically becoming GM again after the demise of Chip Kelly here. And we got plenty to talk about with the Jeffrey Lurie press conference. A lot of topics that we're going to get into as the owner addressed, and was questioned on a variety of topics. And we'll get to his responses, my thoughts on kind of the carousel, if you will, from the owners' meeting of topics with Jeffrey Lurie. Of course, back in the free agency department, even though for the most part things kind of died down on that front a few weeks ago. Nevertheless, Howie Roseman has made a couple defensive deals and adds a couple players on defense that is a little bit thin, obviously at cornerback, and just in general, after making a couple cuts and moves and whatnot, and players walking, what have you. The Eagles have reached an agreement, a 2-year deal with veteran defensive end Chris Long from the New England Patriots. Tuesday, coming fresh off of a New England Patriots Super Bowl championship, of course, with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady's 5th championship. And quite frankly, Chris Long, he's 32 years old. Is he going to maybe help at least give a little depth to this defensive front? I guess perhaps. It is what it is. And the Eagles, of course, also agreed to a 1-year deal with 29-year-old cornerback Patrick Robinson, who, gives them, I guess, a little bit of depth at cornerback as well. You could say Band-Aid signings, I guess, but these are, as Howie Roseman coined them, these are kind of value signings here.
I like vanilla and chocolate.
Yeah. He basically said, if you can, he said back in January, we're not looking for, we're not looking for Band-Aid, we're not looking to make Band-Aid signings or whatever, and you could maybe make a case these are a couple Band-Aid signings. But he also said if you can get value late in free agency like this, and fill at least improve your team, improve the depth on your team, albeit in short-term contracts and not with long-term solutions, then he was going to go ahead and do that. So, I mean, yeah, I don't see an issue with it. I mean, these are some pretty cheap signings. So it adds a little bit of depth, and so it kind of helps bridge the gap a little bit, I guess, because maybe they don't have to draft as heavily on defense as maybe they would have to this year, and maybe they can still draft well on the defensive side of the ball this year, but there's not as much pressure to do it all in one draft, I guess you could say. Maybe next year they can also draft a little bit here on defense, and so understandable signings. With what little cap room that the Eagles had, making a couple more moves. And for what it's worth, Robinson, a former late first round selection. We'll see how they fare here in the Jim Schwartz defense, and maybe add a little bit of depth here, a little much needed depth on the defensive side of the ball. So we're gonna play we're gonna play audio from the Jeffrey Lurie press conference. And, of course, among the topics, you got kind of a laundry list here of topics. Among them, the obvious optimism he has for Carson Wentz, the praise he has for Howie Roseman and what he did last season to get Carson Wentz, what he's done in the recent free agency period, filling the wide receiving position, kind of, turning that upside down from last year's what they had, just general optimism general praise for Howie Roseman. The Eagles viewing Joe Douglas as a key addition last year after the draft, and that he's going to have that ultimately Howie has the final decisions in this year's draft, but Joe Douglas is kind of going to be the go-to guy as far as crafting the draft, if you will. Jeffrey Lurie describes the hiring of Joe Douglas as a pivotal moment last offseason, and that he'll be leading the way with the Eagles drafts. Although, again, Howie Roseman will have the final decision, but a collaborative effort between the two. Will the Eagles consider drafting Joe Mixon? We'll hear his responses on that, as he doesn't rule that out. I say I don't. We'll get into this because he addresses this and kind of refers to how they gave Michael Vick a second chance back in the day. However, I would argue Joe Mixon, if you draft him, you're basically drafting him to be a starter, basically right away, and a key component on the offensive side of the ball. Whereas Michael Vick was brought in here behind Donovan McNabb. He was a backup quarterback, which the idea is to never play. And then they had Kevin Cobb here. So Vick was brought here as a glorified backup, and he had served a punishment. And although a lot of people to this day hold the Eagles in kind of disdain for bringing Vick here, I don't know. I don't think the disdain is fair, seeing how he revamped himself here in Philadelphia as a man. But again, the Joe Mixon thing to me is just a little different. I don't want to bring that whole PR problem to get in the way. And Jeffrey Lurie also kind of emphasized in this press conference that we'll hear he also emphasized that Chip Kelly kind of left the locker room here. He kind of left the locker room in shambles a little bit.
Was that like a wise ass comment?
It's coming from Jeffrey Lurie. Kind of, emphasize that, and that kind of praise Doug Peterson in this past season for kind of gluing the locker room back together a little bit. And I just don't. I mean, I just don't know if bringing Joe Mixon here, the potential distraction that can be. I just don't. I don't want to deal with it. And you can say it happened a few years ago or whatever. Well, it's now a pertinent issue as of late with that video that came out, and just kind of some other baggage that has surrounded him. I mean, he'll get a chance to play somewhere. Okay, he'll get quote unquote a second chance somewhere. But I don't want it to be here. Okay? So there's that topic, of course, that came out. Jeffrey Lurie denied the report that he's more involved in football decisions. This is a big one. There was a report a few days ago earlier this week that Jeffrey Lurie blocked the New York Jets from hiring Eagles quarterbacks coach John DeFilippo. He said that was Doug Peterson's decision. So I don't know what to make of that.
Okay, I'm going to keep loving on him. And
my take is that if Jeffrey, I don't know, if Jeffrey Lurie made these moves, the speculation is that, for one thing, what if Doug Peterson doesn't succeed this year? What if Doug Peterson kind of looks like, I don't know, a weak link in a sense, or the weak link in a sense of holding this team back with some bad coaching decisions, some bad fundamental decisions, that some of which we saw last year and we've talked about throughout the season. Could Doug Peterson be on a short leash? That's a question that, brings up. Could John DeFilippo be being kept here as maybe a fallback plan, as maybe a next head coach if Doug Peterson were to get clipped?
Come on, that's terrible!
I guess that's one reason. Another reason, I think, John DeFilippo being kept here, whether or not it was Doug Peterson's decision, whether or not it was Jeffrey Lurie's decision, which, again, Jeffrey Lurie denies that it was his decision to block the Jets from hiring John DeFilippo. As quarterback's coach, developing Carson Wentz, it's year 2. Is it not key to kind of keep that stability and have this, have the same quarterbacks, have the same head coach developing Carson Wentz here? That's important, kind of to keep that intact. And again, say John DeFilippo went to the Jets, and say next year, like, if Doug Peterson just kind of fails and is on a short leash, and Jeffrey Lurie after year 2 say moved on from, then already 1 year Carson Wentz, his original quarterback's coach, is gone, and another year later his original head coach for the Eagles here is gone. It just kind of, I think keeping Doug Filippo here is kind of important to the stability and, the growth of Carson Wentz here as a quarterback here in year 2. So I think that's, an important factor to look into.
I agree.
And maybe maybe there is truth. I don't know. Of course, Jeffrey Lurie's not going to say that, especially if he's already denying that he had involvement in that decision. He's not gonna say we're keeping John DeFilippo here in our back pocket because he might be the next head coach if, say, Doug Peterson gets clipped. Whether it be this year or next year, whenever it could be, if Doug Peterson just isn't getting the job done. And furthermore, Lurie gives an assessment of Doug Peterson. And again, this is kind of what I brought up a moment ago. Jeffrey Lurie notes in the press conference how Chip Kelly left a fractured locker room behind, and Doug Peterson helped bring players back together. He likes Doug Peterson's aggression, such as going forward on fourth down, and yada yada. Let's see more. He basically admits in the press conference that the Eagles basically bought a draft pick by trading Sam Bradford. Let's see what else. Oh, here's another one, and I don't understand. I don't understand the Kelly Green jerseys phenomenon. I'm sure I mentioned it before here on the Tyler Werner Show. But I don't totally understand. I don't know. I don't know what the hype is about bringing the Kelly Green jerseys back. To me, I like the midnight green. To me, it's more original. The midnight green to me, it stands out. And I guess it's more, I don't know, with the times, if you will. I mean, I know they've had the midnight green jerseys for the last 20 years. If anything, I've always thought that if the Eagles went with, like, say they went with a silver jersey. I'm not a huge fan of the black jerseys. I know people say about those being, but hey, if they had like a silver alternate jersey and then the midnight green helmet, I don't know. And maybe the green pants so I don't know. You could look into that. I guess like doing a little custom design or something, but I think that would be an interesting alternative. But supposedly Jeffrey Lurie wants to bring back Kelly Green jerseys as alternates. And he basically didn't rule out in the press conference that the Kelly Green jersey, he did not rule out those jerseys becoming the Eagles' primary jersey again one day. Again, I don't know I mean, people why people want the Kelly Green jerseys back so badly. It's like when I think of the Kelly Green, I mean, what did they do in the Kelly Green jerseys that were so special to begin with that, you need to bring them back? Like if, say, the New England Patriots changed jerseys, okay, and then and they weren't, I don't know, and then down the road, it's like why don't they bring back the jerseys when they were winning championships? I can see that. Not only that, and just having just a like for the appearance of their jerseys. That the Eagles, it's like, oh, why can't we bring back the Kelly Green jerseys when, it's like, what did they do in the Kelly Green jerseys? They didn't do anything in the Kelly Green jerseys. It's not like they won championships in the Kelly Green jerseys, and here we are years upon years with the, 20 years with the midnight green jersey. It's like, why don't they bring back the jerseys that they wore back when they were winning championships? That doesn't exist. For the most part, it represents a time period of losing. And you could see, I mean, it's not like they've, one Super Bowl appearance in the last 20 years, of course. And some playoff success, at least more than what the Eagles, for the most part, had before that. So, to me, that's one reason. That's one thing. Like, it's not like they did anything in the Kelly Green jerseys where it represents, good old days of winning. All right, maybe you had the Reggie White, Randall Cunningham. Yeah, that's about it. Still, not a whole lot of success in those jerseys. Not nearly the success they had with Donovan McNabb and Coach Andy Reid in the early days. But even still, that wasn't the kind of success. It still wasn't the level of success we ultimately still desire for to this day here with the Philadelphia Eagles. But so you throw that, to me, that are, and then again, like I said, the Kelly Green jerseys, I mean, yeah, if you like them, okay. But to me, the midnight green jerseys, they stand out more. That color, like when I see somebody walking around or something, like say I see them from the side, and I don't see an Eagles logo or anything that says but I see an Eagles green. Chances are, when they turn around, like say they got a midnight green hat on, and I see them from the back, I don't see anything on the back of that hat that indicates anything. But if I see the midnight green on that hat, I'm thinking when they turn around, that's an Eagles hat. And sure enough, they turn around, and 99 times out of 100, it's Eagles gear. Because of that midnight green. It stands out. Maybe I'm in the minority. I don't know. But I like the midnight green. It happens to be my favorite color. And maybe there's, again, maybe partiality being an Eagles fan in there. But it is what it is. I'm not against occasionally bringing back the Kelly Green jerseys as an alternate. Maybe 1 or 2 games a season. Certainly on the Thursday night football when they do the color rush. I'm sure, okay, maybe that's a time to, kind of have like that Kelly Green look. It look like a bunch of green fruity pebbles out there, or, green Kool-Aid or Gatorade in the tanks or whatever. But ultimately, I say stay the course with the midnight green jerseys. You can maybe sell me on a cool silver jersey mixed with midnight green in there, but the Kelly Green, I don't know. I never got that hype. All right, it's a Tyler. We'll be right back after this. We're going to take a break here and come back on the other side and get into this press conference. All the topics we kind of just hinted at as Jeffrey Lurie hits up all of them as the questions come in from the press. It's the Tyler Werner Show. We'll be right back after this. Attention parents. Is your under 18-year-old daughter being cyber-stalked by a man who identifies themselves as a grown adult male?
I want to meet you and fool around. Are you up to meeting tonight, hon? I think I would like to shower with you. We can do it in the shower, too.
If so, you need to contact Chris Hansen and Company to bust these online cyber-stalkers.
How are you tonight? Why don't you have a seat there and get comfortable for that? I guess you're going to tell me next that this is the very first time you've done something like this.
Chris Hansen and the Dateline crew will take care of it. Contact us, and we will put an end to the cyber stalking that your daughter is experiencing.
Well, there's something you got to know. I am Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC, and we're doing a story on computer predators.
Busted!
Investigators are calling it the heist of the century. The grand robbery of Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs, committed by some apparently hungry NFL officials who love their balls.
When I came in Monday morning, I was shocked to learn of the news reports about the balls and the process that happened between when they were prepared and went to the officials and went to the game.
As shocked as Belichick was of the news, perhaps Brady, the last man out of the kitchen on that Sunday night, was even more shocked to hear of the news of the theft.
I have a process that I go through. It was the same process that I always go through. When I felt them, they were perfect. I mean, I wouldn't want anyone touching those. I would zip those things up and lock them away, and that's what I thought I was doing.
As Brady and Belichick up the ante on their ball security, you'll just have to pick up a pack of their meatballs the next time you hit the grocery store and enjoy just how perfect these balls really are.
Tom's personal preferences on his ball security are something that he can talk about in much better detail than I could possibly provide.
Back here on the Tyler Werner Show on this, post-owners meeting edition here with Jeffrey Lurie, the press conference. We talk a lot of topics coming out of it, and as we discussed in the first segment of the show, and I want to get to this audio as we have a decent amount here to share with you. For those who haven't heard it, on Tuesday night, this is what Jeffrey Lurie had to say when he spoke out for the first time about the Eagles in almost a year to the press.
I want to thank our fans. Lincoln Financial Field this past season was awesome, electric, welcoming a new quarterback, a new coach. You're never satisfied first year with a new coach and new quarterback at 7-9, but I am more than excited about the direction of the franchise. It's great to walk around here having the feeling that I do, surrounded by terrific young quarterback, a coach that really captured the locker room. We can talk more about that. Howie, we can talk more about that, did one heck of a job to acquire Carson and some of the moves before that and leading up to it and after. And the hiring of Joe Douglas, I thought, was the pivotal moment of the last year as well, because the whole thing was keyed to can we, at some point, without tanking, which you don't do in football, acquire or have any access to getting a franchise quarterback. They don't come around very often. You hope you pick well when they do, but how do you even get to that? Because usually a team that's finished with the worst record or the worst two records in the league, their basic problem is they have no quarterback. So we looked at the quarterbacks that were in that class, but we also looked at the quarterbacks that were coming up in this class, and we even looked at 2018. And it was, I give our guys a tremendous amount of credit for identifying a very special player and person and athlete who he has a lot of the ingredients we're looking for. And we made the move, and the rest is history, and we'll all see how it all plays out over the years, because you never know. You don't fool yourself into thinking you have something until it all happens and all gets put together. But just as an owner, I couldn't be more excited about the direction of the franchise. Open it up to any questions.
As far as personnel decisions and coaching decisions, what role do you play in those decisions, and has it changed during the course of the ownership?
Right. I've always, no, it has not changed. I always feel like it's my responsibility to set the best atmosphere, the best environment possible to give us the resources to have as much success as we can. So that goes into how you invest in scouting, player personnel, player development, every aspect, sports science, how do you support your coach, good public relations, every aspect that you can think of, smart talent evaluation. You want to give the resources and then let people make the decisions. And I've always, believed in that. Now, does that mean I don't ask a lot of questions? I love football, and I've always, whether it's whether we're going to select Donovan McNabb or move up to take Carson or whatever we're doing, my role is to provide the resources, but I ask a lot of questions to create the final strategy that our guys take.
Jeff, are there certain instances though where you feel like you have to step in particular when John Tolpo was up for that Jets offensive coordinator job, the interview? Did you feel like it was necessary to step in there?
It wasn't necessary because, our philosophy is the coach makes those decisions, and Doug talked to me about it, and we talked about the need to keep stability for Carson at that position, and, I just supported Doug. It was sort of like this was a no-brainer. Very good young coach. He's going to do great in the NFL, and it was important, as, Doug and I talked about it, that in year 2, to keep the same quarterback coach and just allow that to flourish for Carson.
Does Doug typically, or the coaches typically come to you in those types of situations?
Yes.
Or was this a particular one that you felt?
No, they would normally, whether it was Andy or Doug or Chip or anybody, would come and say, a team is interested in a certain coach. He's under contract to us. I don't want to lose him. In this case, Doug, I don't want to lose him. And and it was sort of very quick meeting. It was like,
made the final decision.
Doug, for me, it's how, when you have that quarterback, and we hope we do, you can't be overconfident. All the ingredients are there with Carson. You've been around him, and I think you know what we have, but it has to all play itself out. But it takes, as it took with Donovan, and whenever you have a really good quarterback around the league, if you watch, it takes a very patient, disciplined approach. Short-term solutions to get to 10-6 or whatever quickly with that quarterback are non-sustainable. You've got to draft well. You have to have multiple drafts in a row, hopefully, in where you're surrounding that quarterback on all sides of the ball. And that's the formula. It's not that complicated. It's hard to accomplish, but it's not that complicated. As an owner, I've got to be really patient, and at the same time, I'm very competitive. We'll make moves that will make us better this year. However, we won't make a move where it's going to cost us flexibility or ability to use resources in future years, because we're in the mode where we're not one player away. We have lots of holes. And you got to recognize that first. We have lots of holes, and we have to draft really well over the next few years to accomplish what we want to accomplish early on in Carson's career. Matt Ryan's done one hell of a job and has had a great career. Finally got to the Super Bowl in, age 30, 31. And they've had a lot of ups and downs. I think the year before, were they 6-10 or something like that? Had a great year. They've got a great young coach, and they've been patient and realized that it's not about changing quarterbacks. It's just surrounding them well with depth and smart thinking, and that's our strategy. You've got to be patient.
Jeff, I'm sorry, that
go ahead.
Has come out of the NovaCare about being patient, about taking the long view, but how do you marry that with then going out and getting the top wide receiver on the market? If you're going to be a draft team.
Yeah, no, when you're patient, you also have opportunities. So the key to that is to have optionality. It's not to say we're not going to pay any good players. There's a chance in terms of deal making in the NFL at a certain point in free agency where you gain optionality. If a player isn't able to secure the long-term deal that he was looking for, why not take a chance? And I would only do it pretty much on young players like Alshon Jeffrey, because you have a chance to hold his rights and see how that develops, but you gain optionality. So it was a win-win for us. It could be great in the future. It helps us this year, and there's optionality so we can reuse that resource in the future without having extended it too far, without knowing how good the player is.
Jeff, speaking of drafting,
have
you seen the video of Joe Mixon, and how involved would you be in that type of decision in terms of taking a player like that?
I don't want to talk about a specific player. Of course, I know all about situations like that. I'll say this. First of all, we've been an organization that's given players a second chance. However, we've also been an organization that really values character. Okay? So add to that the fact that I would never want to telegraph what we're going to do at any position in the draft. So sitting here with all you guys, just to be completely honest, I can't explain to you exactly what we would be doing because I don't want to telegraph to the rest of the league what we're going to do. Okay? So that's sort of the only real example of that I can give is Michael Vick, because it was a big decision. And that's the real time you can replay that press conference. It took a lot of, searching my own values and family and all that, love of dogs and all that, but really tried to take it on a case-by-case basis, and that's what we do. So I'll naturally talk to Howie, to Joe, Don Smolensky, and, we'll discuss every situation like that. And I listen. I'm more of a listener and asker of questions. In the end, of course, it's my decision if we're going to sign Michael Vick or not.
All right, so that's, before we hit the next break, some of what Jeffrey Lurie had to say. We'll play some more on the other side. But yeah, got into the Joe Mixon. I can understand. He doesn't want to telegraph anything that they're going to do. He doesn't want to give away, obviously, whether or not they'd be targeting a guy like Joe Mixon or not. And like I was saying earlier, Jeffrey Lurie, he doesn't rule that out in this press conference. So I guess he's fair game. I mean, ultimately though, because like Jeffrey Lurie's saying, they're not gonna. He's not gonna show their hand or anything, and not to mention Howie, Joe Douglas especially, are the guys making the selections. However, Jeffrey Lurie would override the selection of somebody like Joe Mixon. The controversy that just hangs over him. Yeah, and that's something Jeffrey Lurie's probably not going to say at this point. He's not going to reveal where he's at. And like he said, case-by-case basis is how he approaches this situation. So, whether or not, only time will tell when the NFL draft comes up next month as to whether something like that happens, where the Eagles select Joe Mixon. But as I've said before, I don't want him here. So he mainly addressed that in that first segment there of the interview, press conference with the owners meeting down in Arizona. So that's we'll see what else Jeffrey Lurie has to say, as we've kind of hinted at earlier in the show, as to the wide range of topics that he covers, with all the questions that came his way. So stay tuned for more. Hear more Jeffrey Lurie at the owners meeting as he speaks for the first time in over a year about his Philadelphia Eagles franchise. It is the Tyler Werner Show. We'll be right back after this.
Number one box office attraction, number one WWE superstar, multi-time WWE champion, Brock Lesnar.
Time to revamp your office space, eh? Looking for an interior decorator? Look no further than Brock Lesnar.
Uses a sledgehammer.
Out with the old, in with the new. Give Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman a call.
Mr. Lesnar, you're in the future of interior decorator. I think we're done.
I'll have some skirt steak, some brisket, little piece of that New York steak, a couple of them steak fingers, and a burger.
You've known for a long time that you are going to have to get real about fat or stay real fat. It didn't get that way by accident or by some outsider's doing.
Put some macaroni and cheese on there, too. Is there any chicken fried steak left?
Your weight just keeps creeping up or maybe even shooting sky high.
3 slices of pecan pie and 2 cups of coffee.
You have a decision to make. You know it, and so do I.
Yes, all right.
You need prescription diet pills or other diet aids to lose weight.
And we return on the Tyler Werner Show. It's all Philadelphia Eagles today, and Jeffrey Lurie and what he had to say. NFL owners meeting, the annual NFL owners meeting, late March. And yeah, I mean, I guess we could pretty much officially do this for the Flyers season. Well, for the past week, they've kind of been, riding that fine line between, a 0.5% chance of making the playoffs, but as I've kind of speculated in recent weeks, it's no playoff year for the Philadelphia Flyers. And as far as the Sixers are concerned, at this point, they're better off just losing out. And I don't mean to get the whole tank conversation started up again or whatever, but at this point, to get one of the top several picks in the draft to guarantee themselves a spot and get one of the top, I mean, that's at this point, it's they're just kind of better off doing that.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not Tom McGinnis. And as we've just seen talent in the March Madness tournament, some of that top flight talent that the Sixers can get in this draft, it's one of those things where if you push yourself outside of that, sixth spot or so in the draft, things kind of, value kind of drops off after that. As far as, maybe the Sixers get a guard in here and with one of those top, 5-6 picks. At this point, they might. I mean, it's one of those things. It's hard to, tell professional players to go out there and just throw games, but ultimately, kind of root in the back of your mind, just kind of root for the Sixers at this point, because there's nothing to gain by winning anymore. So I don't know, but that's kind of where things are at with the Sixers. Really, it's all Eagles right now, and Philly season is upon us certainly, but MLB power rankings had the Phillies 29th out of 30th. Is that too low? Is that I don't know, but it's not looking good for the. It's looking like it could be another long season for your Philadelphia Phillies. So as I was saying, let's get back to the Eagles here before we, as we start to wind down this edition of the Tyler Werner Show and kind of discuss what Jeffrey Lurie had to say, the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, coming out and speaking.
You've got to open your heart
about his football team. And of course, he's had, some positive. He's excited. He's very excited, he said. Couldn't be more thrilled, I believe he said, about the direction of this team. Singing praises of Carson Wentz and Howie Roseman. Let's hear some more of what Doug. let's hear some more of what Jeffrey Lurie had to say here at the owners' meeting down in Arizona.
I'm not even comparing the two, Sal. All I'm saying is every player situation, without getting into any specific player as we go forward, is on a case-by-case basis. You've got to do your due diligence in this world. And it's not fair to the organization or the player to not have all the information. And that's where we dig, and we dig a lot, and try to make the soundest decision.
Jeff, 2 years ago you were here, and this was after the front office shakeup, and you strongly endorsed the move to put Chip in charge of personnel. You also in turn said that you would kind of hold accountable for all his decisions. But do you look back upon that with great regret in terms of what happened, and now do you feel like moving forward you have a plan in place in terms of the front office and the offense?
It's the complication to the question is I don't regret giving Chip that opportunity, because I had to decide whether he was going to be fully capable of that responsibility. On the other hand, I think that the job performance obviously didn't meet with my expectations, and it was a clear decision that was not the way to go. Going forward, part of my excitement about the franchise is I have a lot of confidence in Howie, and I have a tremendous amount of confidence in how he's organized football operations. That we don't talk about that enough, but football operations today is a multifaceted, it's not just about scouting. There's many, many areas that contribute to every decision. And one of the main things Howie and I discussed when he was going to be in the football operations role was he had to have a top-notch player personnel department, or we were going to find somebody who could find a great player personnel department. That was his responsibility. He went out and recruited Joe Douglas, Andy Weidel, and they put together something I hope can be very special. Really strong. In fact, when I'm talking to a lot of GMs here, I get a lot of congratulations about Carson, and I go, oh, look, it's just 1 year. But I get more talk about attracting Joe Douglas and Andy Weidel than almost anything else. The proof's in the pudding. We have to have several strong drafts. Joe will be leading the way there, and we'll be really counting on their judgment to do a great job.
So retiring or bringing back Howie and that person.
Yes.
Was that
in the football operations role? Yeah.
Was that almost a condition of putting him in that role that he would find
yes.
personnel guy?
Absolutely. In addition to himself. And I want to go back to how pleased I am and excited about what Howie's been able to do, because took over a difficult situation after losing, a premier player like LaShawn McCoy, and a situation where the salary cap wasn't particularly promising in terms of what we wanted to accomplish. We didn't have a franchise quarterback. We had some older players that were descending, and how we put together a blueprint. He thought it through and how he looked forward. He looked at our situation. He looked at the history of the league. We were in lock sync in our thinking on this, and how we were able to eventually get up to 2. Also using our people to identify an outstanding young player who would be available. And in the end, when you think about it, after the Bradford trade, he was able to get this quarterback from 8 for, let me see if I have this right. We gave up a 2 and a 3, and we got back 2 4s. So, if this all turns out the way we hope, that's the story of the past year. If Carson's what we think he is, that's the story. How do you do that? How we came up with a plan. We wanted to reallocate resources away from a couple of the players we had acquired and future in terms of getting up to 8 from 13 without having to use up draft picks to accomplish that. How do you do that? He was able to do that. It was outstanding. I think it's all about consistent improvement. We're not gonna draft to maximize short-term holes that are going to artificially boost a 2017 record. That's not the way to do it. That's the key to the patience here. That's the key to the discipline. The one thing I've learned, and I know Howie's in lockstep and Joe is in lockstep here, is it's hard enough to hit on draft picks. If you go through it, the odds are not good in any round. First round's the best round. The odds are not high. You're much better off, and the much better odds at taking the best player. Now, if you have 2 equal players, you might lean towards the harder to get position, or you might lean towards the position you need the most. That's possible. But anytime I've seen us and any team drop down to fill a need, you have less of a chance on hitting with a blue chip draft choice, especially early in the draft. So we are really hell-bent on making sure we don't just focus on short-term needs, because you need everything in this league. I hope we don't need a quarterback, but basically, what don't we need in 2020? And you're talking about the third year for a player, third or fourth year for a player. That's when you're really going to have the draft picks impact your team. And I can't think of a position we're not going to need in 2020. So let's take the best possible player available. And if it's at a position that's really hard to get, then that weighs into it too.
All right, so there's Jeffrey Lurie, kind of a summation of a lot of what he had to say at the press conference. Again, he addressed a wide range of topics, and you didn't hear all of it in the audio, but the press conference is out there. At the owners meeting down in Arizona, and a lot of draft talk as we start to get towards the draft. A lot of Jeffrey Lurie addressing the draft in this press conference, and earlier saying how having a few drafts in a row that are very good are key. And again, singing the praises of Howie Roseman and how he was able to get Carson Wentz with last year's draft at pick number 2, in moving up from 13 to 8 and then eventually number 2 in order to land Carson Wentz. And again, I mean, kind of with what was kind of left here with Chip Kelly, and kind of just addressing how basically it was the wrong move to give Chip Kelly all that power that he gave him 2 years ago. And I remember sitting here and saying how that was not the right move. It was. And I remember it was that owners meeting press conference 2 years ago where it sounded like Jeffrey Lurie was out in the wilderness and there were birds chirping and stuff like that. And kind of defending the decision to do that. And it just didn't add up. And here we are 2 years later, and Jeffrey Lurie is again singing the praises of Howie Roseman after that decision. And yeah, I mean, 1 year after that, where Howie was basically demoted and relegated to equipment manager, whatever. 1 year later, he's pulling out all the stops to get Carson Wentz drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. And now here we are another year later with another draft coming up. Joe Douglas in the fold here, and kind of a collaborative effort with Howie Roseman. But it sounds like, I don't know, maybe it sounds like it's mostly a Joe Douglas production with, again, Howie Roseman having the final say. We'll see. We got about less than a month now until that draft, and Jeffrey Lurie's saying about, maybe, we may need every given position in 2020, and that's part of the thinking process. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, but as far as drafting the best player available, well, you got needs right now that are a little more paramount than others. So I don't necessarily agree with that. Right, take the best player available, because in a few years you'll need everybody. But I don't totally agree with that. But nevertheless, those are some of a lot of the things Jeffrey Lurie had to say. Next week we'll discuss more. Supposedly Doug Peterson's also going to be speaking, so kind of giving a little bit of an address. So maybe next week we'll visit it on the Tyler Werner Show if it happens to be interesting enough and talkable enough. I don't know. It seems like when Doug speaks, I don't know. There's not high demand to hear what he has to say. I don't know.
Come on, that's terrible!
No offense to Doug, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe we got a few weeks. Like I said, a little less than a month until the draft comes up. And again, with Flyers season winding down, Sixers season winding down, no playoffs for either, and the Philly season beginning, it may not be very promising. It's kind of the Eagles leading the charge once again. And so we'll be leading the charge with the Eagles talk right here on the Tyler Werner Show. As always, stay tuned for more next week on the Tyler Werner Show. We'll talk to you then, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.